And different kinds of knowledge is produced in different areas. And therefore, we have to trust that the knowledge that other people are producing is valid and worthwhile, can be authenticated. Now, in our material lives, that's pretty easy. If someone says, I have a good toaster, and I buy the toaster, it doesn't work, I return the toaster, maybe that company goes out of business. But in intellectual knowledge, the process of authentication and verification is almost impossible in any short amount of time. So you look at Korach, he's reading the people. He says they feel very dissatisfied. They feel dispirited. And so he has, I wrote in my little article about the idea of an enthymeme, thymos meaning mind and en meaning in. An enthymeme is when you say something that sounds like it has some kind of logical force and therefore a guide to action, but actually is not the result of any thinking whatsoever, but rather is something of a rhetorical manipulation. And I gave an example in my article and earlier today. So when he says, why do you Levites take so much upon yourself? Okay. Lama. Why? Now you remember that of the 5 things you should memorize in any conversation, when someone says why, what do you say back? You say, is this a complaint or are you asking for information? Okay? Never let the word why go by unanswered. I train people over and over again. Why did you do that? You want an explanation or are you complaining? If you're complaining, let me just hear your complaint. But oftentimes when people say why something, they put into the mind of the listener. Let's say if you're watching this, there's something wrong, but you don't know exactly what it is because they haven't made a case. Now, if someone says it to you and you feel defensive, someone says, why did you do that? You say, wow, I got to come up with an explanation. Well, I feel frozen here. I didn't really think this one out. They don't actually looking for an explanation at all. They're just playing a domination game. They're playing an aggression game. They're trying to push you back onto your heels. So Korach instinctively knows this. So oftentimes the people that say why, what they're actually doing is trying to aggress, dominate, and put you in the position of explaining, which to the outsider always looks like a weakened position. So oftentimes people who actually don't offer a solution but offer questions are trying to create doubt in the mind of the listener. Something I notice when people say, why is it that? It's to create doubt. Because most things that people ask a why to, they could probably give the answer if they cared. They could probably explain it if they cared. So when I think of Korach saying, why do you Levites take so much power on yourself? Moshe could have said, look, are you complaining about it or are you asking for information? So Korach would say, well, I'm actually complaining. And he would say, okay, what exactly is the nature of your complaint? Now notice, most folks don't do that. They don't say the nature of their complaint. They want to create doubt and defensiveness. So going along with my earlier comment, let's try to think what Korach's complaint is. And this is why I love, whenever you think about any kind of knowledge, meaning Moses and Aaron have taken too much upon themselves, there's almost always a general rule that's being broken. Unarticulated, planted into the unconscious of either the recipient of this complaint or the person who's listening. Now try to think about it. Every complaint assumes a rule. That there's some rule that's out there that should be followed, you haven't followed it, and therefore something. Now, if people were clear, say, look, here's the rule that should be followed. Here's how you broke it, and here's what I recommend. Why don't people do that? Because that could be so easily disputed. You could just say, you Levites, you think you're all that. You think you're a bunch of arrogant people, right? You haven't demonstrated anything. You just created, an insult, a complaint, and doubt in the mind of the listener.